Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. We're going to be starting in a minute or so time. Thanks for joining. Hi, Tamara. There's no sound on yet. We're just waiting for everybody to join. So I think it's almost 12. Yeah, actually, it's 12 o'clock. So we can get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you taking your time out of the day as usual. We do have a slightly different topic today. So normally, if you joined us in the past, we cover best practice tips and utilization of the MotoCommerce platform, or we'll highlight any new features or functions that are coming down the pipeline or are going to be available to you. Today, actually, I have a special guest, Holly Marker from Proactive Dealer Solutions. Holly, thank you so much for joining and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So Holly will give you some insights to what her team focuses on, but there's quite a bit to talk about. We're actually going to cover this in one session, but it's a little bit too much to cover. So we thought we would split it into two sessions. So today, we're actually going to focus on the mystery shop results that Holly's team had conducted across North America. So it's a large number of results that we're talking about. And then we'll look at what are the gaps, like what have Holly's team identified that are gaps when it comes to addressing customers' needs in their follow-up and engagement from dealerships. And then next week, we'll actually go into more detail around best practices that Holly and the team share with their dealers as well to ensure they're getting the activity and engagement and the interaction from customers based on their outreach. So Holly, I'm going to get us all started here because we do have a lot to cover. So thanks so much. If you don't mind just giving everybody a quick intro about yourself and your team.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you again. So Holly Markle, and I am with Proactive Dealer Solutions. So Proactive has been serving the industry, the automotive industry, since 2001. We got our start in BDC, so helping dealers to optimize their BDCs. And since then, we've evolved and continue to evolve. And really at the core, our customer experience management company. And what I mean by that is we work to transform the dealership's culture through people, place, and structure, which really helps to enable the technology like we're talking about today. So with that, I'm so excited to be here today because digital retailing and the disruption that it's bringing to the industry, that's something that we support dealers with daily. So really excited to go through these results from this study and share some trends with you guys.
Thank you, Holly. And actually, like we talked about it before, I know the original focus of your team was around the BDC team. And as we learn it through the disruption that happened last year as well, the BDC team's role is actually evolved so much. There's more and more that they do. And part of the day-to-day like sales process and sales transaction process at the dealerships as well. So I think we'll go into more detail on that in the next session. But I just think it's really important to highlight that everyone's roles have evolved at the dealership as well.
Yeah, COVID in the last year has propelled this industry 3 years right ahead of where we would have been had it not been for COVID. So when you talk about the BDC's roles evolving, for us, it's great that we've had that background, that history, that that's where our foundation was. So now it's really easy for us to pivot, keeping up with market trends, today's consumer, and looking at how that role needs to change in order to enable and support these technologies. Technology doesn't live in a bubble, and by itself, it really doesn't do any good to anyone. It needs the people and the process in order to make it shine, right? And that's a little bit about what we're going to talk about today when we share these results with you.
Okay.
So this is based on 10,000 audits where we went through and we looked at several different components and several different factors on how dealers were able to not only leverage their digital retailing technology and solution, but really the experience that they created for their customers. So let's just jump into the trends, Clarice. The first one was provided a response within an hour. At 72%, we'd like to see this a little bit higher than that. In fact, we'd like to see that response come well within 1 hour. And that's because, we all operate in New York minutes. I was telling Clarice, I just read a study from Forrester that said that 66% of customers say that the number one thing a company can do is respect their time. Not one thing, not a thing, not among the things, but the thing that they can do is the most important thing is respect their time. And that's so important because what are they doing when they're submitting leads? They're submitting leads and they're going down the line, right? And then whoever responds first, that's the one that you're going to get their attention with, right?
Yeah, and I think we've seen it in the past as well, that the customer, while they still engage in and active with that piece of inventory, if you engage them in that conversation, that ultimately also increases the engagement opportunity or percent who will respond back to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you meant personal response provided within 1 hour. So I know sometimes dealership will have a large volume of inbound organic traffic, and I'm not just talking about digital retailing, but in general in e-leads as well. So how can you make that personal when you have to deal with a larger volume? And I think we kind of gonna go into that in the next steps as well, right?
Yeah, we'll go into it in the next steps as well, because I'll talk all day long for it. But in the short term, have some templates ready to go. You don't need to sound robotic, but have some templates ready to go. And also look at what the customer is doing online, and that'll clue you into how you want to frame your response. And then ensure that you have that priority of activity kind of planned out, right? You want to respond to those that are most engaged. And then obviously, quick on the draw, but then start to look at what the customer's breadcrumbs or digital body language is, and then respond accordingly. But I won't go too much into that because I'll give away next week.
Okay, so the next one, personalized subject line. We touched on this a few months ago. We do see still responses from dealerships that the subject line is either very generic and sometimes it's even missing. And that ultimately is a fail because you're not going to open the email, right? If it's an email response we're getting. Mm-hmm.
If you want to get more clicks and opens on your emails, write a personal subject line like you would write a text. If I sent you an email, Clarice, and I said, Clarice, great news, we have your car ready. You're gonna, first of all, it's personalized, I've used your name, and second of all, I've made it relevant, and it's just like a text message, which is so easy, right? We don't even have to sit there and think about what a personalized subject line is. Write it like a text message and then carry on with your email, but you're more likely to get that click through if you do it like that, right?
Exactly. And I like the fact that you mentioned my name there. Like I know it from the way I respond to emails, and I'm sure all of us get lots of emails. Anything that says my name, it is like, okay, let's see what this says. This must be important to me because it's personalized to me.
Yeah. At the end of the day, the market, we are oversaturated with emails and messaging and communication. So anything that we can do to get that interest is going to increase the likelihood that they'll open it.
Sure.
And that goes along the line with, addressing the customer by name. While that was good at 94%, I was very surprised to see that this study came out at only 41% where the employee actually introduced themselves. That's important because, again, at the lead volume that we see in the online submissions that customers do, if you don't introduce yourself and make it personal from the beginning and ensure that they know the dealership that they contacted, you're going to get lumped in with everyone else. There's nothing to stand out there if you're not introducing yourself. So and plus it's just polite, right? It's just a polite thing to do when you're communicating with someone.
Right. And once again, it doesn't look like it's an automated email then, right? You can actually interact with a real person.
Yeah, exactly. Along those lines, showing appreciation for interest, given the fact that customers have all of these options and all this information at their fingertips, well, guess what? They chose you, and now you have their attention and you have an audience. So thank them. This doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be complicated by any means. It's just a quick, hey, thanks so much for reaching out. We'd love to work with you. And it could be that simple, yet we see it only at 61% of the time in these 10,000 audits that we did, which was surprising to me, actually, because it's just a one-liner in my mind, right?
Right. I really like this next one. So provide a customer with a value statement. So I kind of wanted to stop on it. Like, is it the car? Are we talking about the dealership? Is it about the experience they're offering? Like, what's important when it comes to customer value, or whether they're going to do business with you? Like, what stands out?
Yeah, so a customer value statement is one that I'm really passionate about. And I also think that it's something that is rendering the traditional dealership value statement as almost obsolete. Because, unfortunately, and I hope I don't offend anyone, but customers really don't care if you've been in business for 35 years and your family owned and operated and you have, 600 cars or deep inventory. They don't really care about that. They care about their experience. They care whether or not you're able to provide for them a seamless experience that's easy, that's personalized, that's seamless. They want relevant conversations. They're benchmarking dealers, not against other dealerships these days, Clarice. They're benchmarking their experience with companies against other companies and brands that they know and love and do business every day. The Amazons of the world, the Apples of the world, right? Those iconic brands that make our lives easier with our, Siris and Alexas, et cetera, right? And that's becoming the benchmark for these online opportunities and online experiences for consumers. So a customer value statement is really rendering the traditional dealership value statement that we've always done, right, almost as obsolete.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of touch on here that's exactly that. Like you're not just buying into the information that the dealership is able to provide for you on that vehicle, but into the experience as well. And when you get what the experience is going to be like, it builds on that transparency and trust piece that we always talk about as well. That,
absolutely.
Okay, I trust the information you give me, and I trust the process or the experience I'm going to go through as well.
Absolutely. So now we get into addressing availability, and just half the time they address availability.
Yeah, so 1 sec on this one, Holly. So yeah. I often see that call to action button still on dealership websites. It says check availability. And obviously I'm in the industry, but thinking from a consumer perspective, consumers are like, why am I checking availability if it's on your website? Like, why would you showcase something that's no longer online?
When's the last time you put something in your Amazon cart and you went to check out and, oh, sorry, that's not really here. We can't really give you that, right? Yeah. I mean, and I think, and I don't want to be too harsh on the industry by any means, because I think oftentimes, Clarice, an employee is in a tough situation because maybe it was on the website and maybe the inventory just hasn't caught up yet, right? So now they're in a situation where they have to, not so much bait and switch, but they have to have a conversation with that customer that's fact finding that may push them or give them options for different vehicles. That's not a bad thing, but this is a training opportunity. And in fact, I think it's upwards of 80% on average, customers don't actually buy the initial vehicle that they were interested in anyway, right? So let's make this a training opportunity and a coaching moment, and really work with sales teams and BDCs on how you take this situation and how you pivot, right? Ask them open-ended questions, do some fact finding, watch their digital body language, see what else they're clicking on, right? And then use that as a pivot point to maybe have conversations and explore alternatives.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point.
And then these last two, they go hand in hand. I mean, obviously providing a price quote that's low at 29%, answering the caller's questions, in my opinion, that's kind of a gimme, right? So we're still gating information and withholding information. And unfortunately, that doesn't do us any favors. In fact, it does us quite the opposite. It does us a disservice. And the reason for that is because a company right now, they're just not going to do business with an organization that they don't trust. So by providing that transparency, answering all of their questions, it's the same thing over the phone, right? When you're not giving information freely, especially when customers have access to so much of it, they automatically don't trust you, or they don't think you have your processes together. They think that you're disorganized and, that you don't really, you're not credible, right? So you lose credibility. And then lastly, those giving information and providing the transparency of pricing and that, giving that to customers, it's good for the customer, but it really is good for the dealership if you think about it. Give the customer all the information, let them play with the payment calculators, let them see what incentives they qualify for, let them craft their monthly payment, because what's going to happen is by the time they show up at the dealership, they're kind of going to have a better idea on what they can and can't afford. So it's less conversations around, oh, geez, I don't think that they realize they can't afford that, right? They've almost pre-qualified or even, disqualified themselves for any one particular vehicle.
Yeah, and then I think it ties perfectly back in it on the conversations that I've covered on several sessions in the past as well, to creating and sharing those links to the customer's digital shopping cart kind of addresses a bunch of these, because you have all the pricing information, you have the ability to figure out what fits within your budget as well. And even when addressed the availability of a vehicle of interest, if it's no longer available, you can add more than one vehicle into that shopping cart as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And sharing information, that is what customers want. That's what's going to differentiate you. At the end of the day, that is the customer value. You're going to make the experience feel different and allow them to move themselves down the funnel through the information that you're providing and sharing with them, which, it makes our job easier when we think about it. Let the customer move themselves down the funnel at the pace that's comfortable for them.
Yeah, or if you're in the environment, you can easily just guide them as well. So
absolutely,
you've got the same platform, same conversation topic. Everyone has the same information, so it just makes it simpler, right?
We have options.
Yeah, I can't believe we actually run out of time.
I know.
Yeah, I know, because there's lots to talk about here. So I quickly want to touch on this, if we can. So what do we see on the screen here, Holly?
So real quick, this is just a value add that we're going to give back, and really when you go back through and you start to evaluate your own emails and really look at what you want them to include in your lead responses. Look at your first impressions, the first impression that you're creating. We touched on a lot of these with response time and subject line. Customer engagement, that's another huge part, making sure that you're showing appreciation, that you're addressing availability, implement that customer value statement. You want to motivate the customer to the next steps. We talked about advancing them or helping them advance themselves down that funnel. And then end with a bang, a positive lasting impression. You work so hard in these engagements and you start with a positive first one and then you take them all along through the process. Well, don't let it fall apart at the end and make sure that you leave them with a lasting impression.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, if you want to do a little exercise with your dealership, here's a template for it, right? And we had a quick question here from Tamara. So when a lead comes in on Saturday evening, I tell the customer I'll confirm the availability when the dealership reopens on Monday and get in touch with them with further details. Are you also considering any other makes and models? So she will include at least one photo and the price, if not multiple photos. Is there anything that she should put in that response? Anything else that you think would be a good best practice for that follow-up?
Yeah, I get it. It's kind of after hours, right? But that's also when customers are shopping. So I would say let's really look at the process for how that lead's coming in and then the quality of what's going back out. So it sounds like you are providing some options, but I think the biggest thing there is to set realistic expectations. So when can they expect follow-up? When can they expect someone to reach out and connect with them? And then, you've given them some other options, some things to look at where they can do on their own, but set realistic expectations and make sure that they have an understanding of when they'll hear from you.
Yeah, and again, if I'm skipping ahead to next week's session. Yeah. No, I think that was perfect, Holly, and I think we could talk about this forever, I'm sure. But if you can join us again next week, I think it'll be great to kind of go into more detail on the different best practices that your team provides for dealership that has been tried and tested, and it's going to make a difference. So we'll be back. Yeah, we'll be back here next week. I do have Holly's email address on the the screen. So if you do have any additional questions regards to either what we talked about today, what her team is also do or help with dealerships in their day-to-day operations as well, please feel free to reach out to her.
Please
and then
do.
We'll be back here again next week. Holly, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks again.
Awesome. All right. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.